To his left is Navarro, who certainly is on CNN, a well-known Republican strategist and political analyst for CNN and CNN in Espanol. Before this, she served actually in politics. National Hispanic co-chair for Governor Huntsman's 2012 presidential run. He has a new job, so we'll be interested to talk. If you don't know what he's doing now, it's certainly important to our topic today. Also the national co-chair of John McCain's Hispanic Advisory Council in 2008, and worked with Governor Jeb Bush's transitions team back when he was governor of Florida. She has dedicated a lot of her life to working for human rights, and specifically in Central and South America. And she's been a special advisor to the government of Nicaragua, which is the country of her birth. So more than just a talking head on TV, she has an extraordinary background herself. To her left is Malcolm Nance. He is one of the world's leading experts in the strategy and tactics of Al-Qaeda, organization, international terrorism, global security policy, and torture, so don't piss him off. He has nearly 3 decades of field experience in counterterrorism intelligence and combat operations in places that no one of you really wants to go to: the Balkans, the Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, direct support to U.S. Special Ops and intelligence community. He is presently the executive director of the Terror Asymmetrics Project on Strategy, Tactics, and Radical Ideologies, which magically spells out the tapestry in upstate New York. And he's the author of several books, and I'll only mention one. This includes The Plot to Hack America: How Putin's cyber spies and WikiLeaks Tried to Steal the 2016 Election. Which is either the greatest book ever or nonsense, and we'll talk about that today. And then finally, and I don't know how we ended up with Rohrabacher on stage right, but we finally have currently serving his 13th term in Congress. Rohrabacher represents California's scenic 48th district, stretching along the Pacific coastline of Orange County. He is a senior member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and is chairman of its Europe, Eurasia, and Emerging Threats Subcommittee, so exactly what we're talking about today. He's also the vice chairman of the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. Going back to the 1980s, prior to his first election in Congress, he worked as a special assistant to President Reagan, and for 7 years was one of the president's senior speechwriters. So when I talk about an all-star panel that spreads the gamut, that's what you have sitting in front of you. So regardless of your political affiliation, please, an early hand for our panel here. So let's start with a fundamental question. I think we want to get ahead of ourselves here. In 2012, Mitt Romney called Russia the greatest geopolitical threat in the United States, and was widely ridiculed, especially by Democrats. Now things have been somewhat reversed, with the Democrats leading the charge against Russian involvement in the election, well, and everything else, while pro-Trump politicians are yelling everything from witch hunt to nothing burger, which is a great word. However, at last weekend at the Aspen Security Conference, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joe Dunford, said that while North Korea may be more of an urgent threat, and Iran and cyber terrorism are also great concerns, Russia poses the greatest threat to national security. So let's talk about that now. And I want to start with Malcolm, as Malcolm wrote the book on the last election, and obviously anyone else wants to chime in about how much should we be dealing with Russia as an adversary, as an antagonistic partner, or even as a straight-up enemy, or should we be working with them closely on certain issues?
Well, let's start off with that question. You know, when it was brought up in 2012 that, you know, by Mitt Romney, Russia was our greatest adversary. You know, he had an entire history to work on. The president of Russia at that time, who just installed himself again as premier a second time, who had been brought in under some pretty nebulous circumstances in 1997, became the president of Russia after some mysterious apartment building bombings that many in the counterterrorism community really attribute to the government of Russia themselves. A lot of evidence in that respect, considering they captured one of the crews planting bombs. All of these things being said, the president of Russia is a former KGB officer. And when he left, when the Soviet Union fell, and he became the director of Russian intelligence under Boris Yeltsin, the only thing that changed in that amount of time was the letters KGB changed to FSB, and they removed the border guards. That's it. The Russian spy agencies and the intelligence community got a better budget, more money, global ability to travel, less scrutiny, during all of that time, but they are still James Bond villain evil. Everything they did in the Soviet Union, they do today. Everything that they did that we hated from 1917 to 1989, they have actually started to do again, but only removed communism. And they are now pushing an imperial policy using all of the resources, assets, and lessons learned during the period of the Soviet Union, and they decided they were going to take a shot at the biggest target. And they were going to engineer, through propaganda warfare, cyber warfare is the delivery system, and the US media and WikiLeaks as their laundromats, an ability to choose a president of the United States. And I will second my brother in the intelligence community, General Hayden, when I say that this is quite possibly the single greatest intelligence operation in the history of the world. If the evidence that we've seen already, which by the way, you guys are always complaining there's no evidence, that's because it's called intelligence. Intelligence is not evidence until it's in the hands of the Justice Department. And there's tons of intelligence. You don't want to see it when it becomes evidence.
Let me take this question to Congressman Liu, because not only are you a computer scientist, but you have a law degree from Georgetown, and as a member of Congress, you do see, you obviously can't tell us all about it, but you do see a lot of the information that perhaps the audience is not seeing. So you can talk about the relationship from your perspective with Russia as an adversary, as a potential enemy, or as someone we can work with on several issues.
Sure, thank you for that question. Let me first of all thank all of you for being here. The more people that participate in our democracy, the stronger our country will be. I don't have any problem with the U.S. having close relations with other countries, including with Russia. What I have a problem with is a president of the United States that acts like he is beholden to Russia. Which is why both houses of Congress, on an overwhelming bipartisan basis, passed the strongest sanctions on Russia ever in U.S. history, including against Russia. The message that we are sending to the President of the United States is, Donald Trump, we do not trust you to do the right thing on behalf of the American people on Russia. You need to say that thing. Why is that? So, I looked at the classified report. I went to classified briefings. The President of the United States is just lying when he says Russia did not do this cyber attack last year or this massive influence campaign. They did. And you don't have to trust me. You could trust his own Director of National Intelligence, his own Director of the NSA, his own CIA Director, all of whom say exactly the same thing. The evidence is there. That's why Congress acted, and that's why we urge him to sign the bill.
So I want to try to be a moderator that fact checks when there needs to be, and I want to back this up. Last weekend, at the same Aspen Security Forum, the current Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, the current Director of the CIA, Mike Pompeo, the current, the current Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, the current Chief of Staff of the White House, and current Counterterrorism and Cyber Advisor, Tom Bossert, all stated unequivocally, now I'm not making this up, unequivocally that Russia was behind the hacks of the election. Pompeo, not exactly a tree-hugging liberal Democrat, said, quote, I am confident that the Russians meddled in this election, as is the entire intelligence community. So, putting that aside, let me go to Congressman Rohrabacher, because you've been very patiently listening to this conversation back and forth, and I know you have something to say about this. So please, give us the perspective from that other side. It should be on.
Hello. Well, I appreciate being able to speak to people who obviously don't like me, so I'll give them a chance to hear what I have. So I'll give you a chance to hear what I have to say, so maybe I can change your opinion. Yeah. So let me just note that as we talk about Russia, let me just note that I think I'm probably the only person in this room, or probably maybe in this state, that actually conducted himself during the Cold War that put me in direct combat with Soviet troops. I have been engaged with various operations during the Cold War, both in Central America and in Vietnam and elsewhere, that put me at great risk in order to defeat communism. Let me just note that, okay? So with that said, that the Soviet Union was our enemy, and when Ronald Reagan became president, he rightfully said, our primary enemy, and he prioritized our enemy. He said, this is what we have to do. We're gonna bring down the Soviet Union. And you know, he just basically said, well, what's your strategy? Your strategy is, we win, they lose, go make it happen. Okay, I am proud to be one of those people who made that happen in a big way. So, with that said, Ronald Reagan and the rest of us talked about peace through strength in those days. Strength was to bring us peace. It was not to put us in a position to maraud all over the world and be the protector of the world in every conflict. And it was not, it's certainly not, so we could be strong and belittle the Russian people forever, having been part of the communist system. Now, how long has it been since you were in Russia? Yes.
Well, I haven't been there, but my
You
three
haven't been there,
adopted
okay. That's enough.
but
That's all
my
I
three
want.
adopted Russian children have.
Okay, yeah, you haven't been to Russia.
I've got three kids. They live in my house.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you something, your kids don't have the kind of information that you would gather if you went, Congressman Lou, have you been to Russia?
I have not.
You have not. Okay, let me just note that my job for the last 6 years, but even before that, was I was a special assistant to President Reagan, was to know what was going on in Russia. Today, I'm the chairman of the subcommittee that oversees our relations with Europe, Russia, and Central Asia. So we have people here who are advocating policies, and they have not been to Russia. Okay, now, let me put something to you. The Russian people are not our enemies. And since the end of the Cold War, instead of what Ronald Reagan wanted when they withdrew all of their troops from Eastern Europe, what Ronald Reagan wanted was for us to embrace them as our friends and make them part of the Western civilization, you might say. Well, what happened was what? Was an unrelenting hostility from a group of people in our government, an unrelenting hostility. It resulted in chaos, and the Russians didn't know what to think about that. Now, I will tell you, there are some bad guys in Russia. Putin is one of them. But let me just note this. We got a lot of bad guys in America. And you know what? Putin is, to me, Putin to me is like Mayor Daley and his gang. He's certainly not acceptable to democratic standards, but when you prioritize what the threat to us today is, it is no longer the Soviet Union. The threat today is radical Islamic terrorism. Our past president could not use those words together. We now have a president who can. And let me just note. Okay, well, it's usually fascists that don't let somebody talk. Okay?
Hey, how about letting me be the one to bring it back on topic? I promise I will.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let me just trust me.
Okay.
Do it.
Let him finish his thought. We'll get back to it. I promise this will be a conversation.
Okay.
If we wanted you up here, we would have
So
invited
Russia today, with all of its imperfections, with all of its semi-authoritarian and authoritarian elements, can help us defeat those people who would put a nuclear weapon into a container and put it in the Long Beach harbor if they could. The Russians aren't going to do that. We have an enemy that's willing to do that today. We need to defeat radical Islamic terrorism, and we need Russia on our side. And this unrelenting hostility that has driven the Russian people back against us has been just over and over and over again. When we could do something that would hurt them, we have done it in the last 15 years.
So let me get Anna Navarro involved, because I really love the fact that we have someone who understands politics as much as she does. There's a question that I really want to know, and some of these questions I think I know the answer to already, but I really want to see what Anna has to say about this. So regardless of Russian involvement, whether we agree on it or not, Vladimir Putin didn't prevent Hillary Clinton from campaigning in Wisconsin. He didn't force her to say basket full of deplorables. He didn't go and do any, there's no evidence, at least so far, that the vote tally itself was hacked. Why then can anyone argue that the Russians had any impact on the outcome of the 2016 election? From a political perspective, please walk us through that.
Well, first of all, let me say, because Dana didn't ask me, but I've never been to Russia either, for the same reason I've never been to Cuba, and I don't go to Venezuela. I do not spend money in countries that are ruled by anti-democratic. To work with Russia where we can, but to do it from a position of strength, not to do it from a position of weakness where we have a government, where we have a White House that thinks it's okay to have Russian agents in the Oval Office and blab what would have been intel, classified. So no, Africans, we treat them like if they're the British. They are not. You are going to deal with them, you're going to deal with them from a position of strength. Now back to your question. You're right. Vladimir Putin did not force Bill Clinton to sit on the plane with Loretta Lynch. Vladimir Putin did not have anything to do with the email server. He didn't have anything to do with Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. He didn't have anything to do with any of those things. We don't have any evidence that any votes have been hacked. What we cannot measure and what we don't know is what the effect was of the fake news, of the propaganda, of the influence in changing votes. This is not a hoity-toity type of effort. We have since realized that it was very targeted to the swing states where you needed to win by a few votes. There's been some conversations that they might have gotten help. They might have gotten help from folks in the Trump campaign. I'm hoping to get the answer to that from Bob Mueller, which is why it is absolutely crucial that Republicans in Congress do everything they can right now to protect Bob Mueller's integrity, and Bob Mueller can possibly be fired by Donald Trump. Everything we have seen this week, the skewering. Jeff Sessions has been turned into a human piñata, to the point where I'm feeling sorry for the guy. And you know why? Because this president is heading the same direction he headed with Comey. He wants to get rid of Mueller. Now the question you gotta ask yourself, and that every Republican has got to ask themselves in Congress, is what toes is Bob Mueller stepping on that this president so badly, despite the effect and the backlash that will result, wants to get rid of him? And so Lindsey Graham has a bill to make it difficult to prevent Bob Mueller from being fired. Republicans must pass that, because if not, this guy's going to fire him, and Republicans are going to have to deal with a constitutional crisis that they're going to be complicit in.
That was a great answer.
So, I just want to, first of all, clarify. When I refer to Russia, any of us here refer to Russia, we're referring to the government of Russia. People of Russia are lovely people. We deal with governments. So, it is true that there are certain things that the Russian hacking operation did not do. But there's a lot that it did, and it wasn't just in the presidential campaign. I am one of 4 recovering computer science majors, so I read this report with an eye towards sort of cyber aspect of it. But there's also an unclassified report that you can read. It's about 16 to 17 pages long. If you just Google unclassified report Russia, it's the first thing that pops up. And it will tell you that there were also hacks of other organizations, including the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. So the Russian operation took information from the Hillary campaign, from congressional campaigns that was secret in terms of to the campaign, and then put them out into the public, and it used that to exploit and influence these campaigns. And so we can't measure that influence. We know that there was an influence, and that's why we need to make sure this doesn't happen again in 2018. And if you read that report, the unclassified one, it also shows that Russians hacked into the electoral boards of several states. So this is much deeper than what you're reading in the press. It went very, very deep.
Let me ask this question, and Congressman Rohrabacher can jump in, and Malcolm too. A couple years ago, the Chinese hacked the Office of Personnel Management, stole 30 million top secret files. All SF-86s, a lot of our deployed intelligence assets around the world. No one started talking about the Chinese as being the greatest threat to the United States. No one started talking about the same kind of things that are discussed with Russia today. Hacking has been just a new form of intelligence collection. And I'm looking at you, Malcolm, talking about intelligence collection, intelligence professionals, but also Congressman Rohrabacher can jump in on this. We're all spying on everybody. We're spying on the Russians, they're spying on us, everybody's spying on everyone else. What changed this from a classic intelligence collection operation to something different? And then Congressman Rohrabacher, if you can respond if it is different or not, after Malcolm gets a chance to talk about that.
Well, first off, I've done a lot of intelligence collection operations, 2 decades of them, full-time, non-stop, all over the place. I've seen operations on this scale and magnitude, right? But that's collection. When we collect something, we don't let you know that we have it. When the Chinese do it, they go in there and they vacuum up everything and they disappear off into China collection land where they analyze all that traffic. In the 2008 election, John McCain and Barack Obama's campaign were hacked by the Chinese. John McCain actually had a letter talking about sanctions against China, and the Chinese took that letter out of his computer and responded to it diplomatically when it was still in his computer, which is how we knew they had been hacked. The Chinese are defensive hackers in the sense that they steal it, they read it, and then they sit back and they wait to see what you're going to do, knowing what they have. What was different this time? And I've been saying this since I was the first person in US news media, last July 25th, to get on television, right in the Independence Hall and say, what has just happened was the United States was just attacked in a wide-ranging cyber warfare and political warfare operation intended to destroy the foundation and trust of American democracy. That is what they did. They weaponized the theft of data. We all do it, okay? But they weaponized it, found cutouts in WikiLeaks, took that information and strategically released data in order to, number one, split the Democratic Party in two on the first morning of the DNC when they released the Debbie Wasserman Schultz emails, which weren't very particularly interesting. But they kept up the word emails. They hacked your mindset towards Hillary Clinton. They exponentially raised the stakes of what the word email was by flooding you with ridiculous emails of freaking pasta recipes. Risotto, right? I'm sorry. And they kept it up right to the day. The only reason they didn't hack the vote is because President Obama picked up the red phone, called Vladimir Putin and said, nothing will happen on election day. We know you're in the system. We know you're trying to do it. We're going to consider this an act of aggression if you do that. And the president even came out to all of you and told you this was happening. But none of you heard it because it was the day Billy Bush video came out and Trump was talking about grabbing hoochie. So that's why you didn't hear the president of the United States tell you we were attacked. Democracy in this nation has stood firm for 241 years. And I, as an intelligence professional, put my foot down when you step into our system of government to choose your own candidate.
Italy had one of their first free elections after the end of World War II. And it looked very much like the communist government was going to win a free and open election in Italy until the CIA got involved and used everyone from Frank Sinatra to the Pope to the mob to essentially steal the election for the anti-communists. This ain't the first rodeo, and I'm not saying that there's apples and oranges because it happened to us and we're really pissed off about it, it happened to us. But where is the hypocrisy in arguing that one country is doing something where don't you think that if we had the ability to somehow stop Vladimir Putin from getting 97% of the vote in the next election, that we would try to do something to influence Russian elections going? Let me ask Congressman Rohrabacher to answer, and then we'll work back the other direction.
And we do that all the time. This has been standard operating procedure for us to hack and to get into their telephones and wiretap. Our wiretap. I voted against the Patriot Act because these people want unlimited chance to do you. Our government feels justified in checking your phone calls. And I said, and when they came back and Bush came back with this wanting to eliminate the sunsets that we had put into provision after 9/11, and I voted against it because they took out the sunsets, for Pete's sakes. Look, it's the United States government. We need to judge people by the same standards that we hold ourselves. And when you do, and if you try to tell people not to do what you are doing yourself, they're going to think that all you're doing is being belligerent, all you're doing is trying to beat them down rather than to stand for a principle. Let me ask our friend here, do you know what CrowdStrike is?
Yes.
Okay, CrowdStrike is an organization, it's a private security company that was financed by Google. Most of us think that the FBI went in and did the examination of the hard drives over at the DNC to find out who actually got that information about all of those emails and released it and got it over to WikiLeaks. Well, the FBI hasn't actually looked at the hard drive. They got their information from this private company. Well, the private company has lots of former CIA people in it too, but there's another company called Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity, VIP, just as many hardcore professional intelligence officers who say that they do not believe that the hacking, which the FBI has not gone in and verified themselves, but is relying on this private organization, and the other veteran intelligence officers say, wait a minute, this looks more like something that was an external device was used, maybe like, I guess they call it flash drive, that's what it looks like. It doesn't look like somebody has hacked in from the outside, which would have taken much longer to get the information. But our own FBI, when you were being told over and over again, oh, that's been proven that the Russians did it, the FBI hasn't even done that. So you've been fed, there's a lot of people who, like Mr. Clapper and Mr. Brennan, I've been dealing with these guys I will just have to tell you, I've been dealing with them for 40 years, if you count my time at the White House. I have learned not to trust American intelligence until you verify what they're telling you.